Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello and welcome to episode number 33 of season 2. My name is Tamara and you're listening to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Today's guest is Christophe. He's a fellow podcaster and his show is I'm Kind of a Big Deal. Today we're going to talk about dating as a little person and maybe some stuff about sex too. If you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and as well. And thanks for joining me today, Christophe.
Hey, Tamara, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really great to be here with you. And I'm a fan of your show. I've started to listen to it, and it's really cool what you're doing, and that you're breaking down some of these barriers when with sex and stuff. So good job.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and we met at Podfest for those that didn't know, and so it was amazing to talk to you. And he was a presenter at Podfest. So his show is really cool, and we talked about some of the interviews he's had before too. So, but yeah, I usually just jump right in if since you've listened, you know this, and we'll talk about how about we talk about dating first, and then we can go into your show and stuff like that. Does that work?
Okay, yeah, sounds great.
Right, so, and then during the podcast too, we talked about with Jana, who is also going to interview you about dating. So, what are some of the challenges and that you found personally or that you've heard of in the community?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Average height people have challenges, right? So I like to say that. So I'm a little person. I'm 4'4" tall, which is considerably shorter than average, and I kind of stick out. And it's not just because I have a bald head. It's really difficult. There are so many things because you, as a little person, there's a really good chance that your self-esteem is going to take many hits in your life, and being able to navigate that stuff is not the easiest. It doesn't come naturally. You really have to spend a lot of time working on how to navigate, how to be okay with yourself, because if you're not okay with yourself, it's going to be really difficult to be around others. And the other thing in my situation is that I just because I'm a little person doesn't mean I would see everything, through a lens that was little. Obviously I did, but when it comes to relationships and stuff like that, I want just what I see, which I don't see other little people dating other little people or little people dating average height people. I just see average dating average. And so that's what I think of as myself. I think of myself, I have this, there's externalized ableism and internal that turns into internalized ableism. And that makes me feel that I should date an average height woman. And that's the only way to date, right? So whenever I've seen many times in the past, years ago, whenever I've seen a little person that could potentially be a possibility of a date or a romantic partner, I've shut it down because I didn't feel like that was something I ever wanted to do. It's not something you see. It's not something that I saw, and it wasn't something that I really wanted to accept. And so it just limits your possibilities in that way. And then from the other side, there are major social constructs in our society where the men are the ones who are supposed to be bigger than the women, and the women believe that construct in many ways, and that just makes us so much less desirable. And there's a feedback loop there of, well, a woman rejected me, therefore I'm going to take that as I'm not worthy of dating them. And then you try to do it again, and there's rejection there, and that feedback loop starts to feed and filter into your psyche and into your being, and you think, wow, maybe I'm not worthy of dating. Maybe I'm not worthy of somebody, to be close to and have as a romantic partner. And I've sat in all of these situations for a very long time. This has been my experience. And I'm 4'4", you know, and on my show, when we talk about things, I say that, with every inch shorter that you go, and I mean, you can even think about this in average height terms, with every inch shorter that you go, it's exponentially harder to be taken seriously as a suitor, as a mate, you know, like go start at 5'10" and go down, you know, with every inch. Like I've run into so many guys who come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're short like me. Like it sucks. It's terrible. It's really bad." And then there are also issues of would want to date me are people that I don't want to date, which sounds like a really elitist and terrible thing to say. But if I clarify that, it's when women have seen me, I've had the experience where they see me as some sort of trivial hookup or some notch in a bedpost or some sort of, you know, bucket list experience, which I don't want that in my life. Like I've experienced that, and I've taken advantage of that in my life, but as a 42-year-old individual, you know, that isn't what I want to be doing for 10 and 20 and 30 more years. You know, I don't want to be that. So it's really, really tough for us, you know?
Yeah, and I was going to say, you're bringing up stuff that is relevant to everyone, like you said, even no matter your height. You don't always connect with people you want to connect with. They're not interested, or the other way around.
Yep.
And as a taller woman, I've had, you know, not quite the same, and I'm not that tall. I'm at 5'8", and some, you know, I can't imagine being like 6'2" as a woman and towering over most people. But and I am someone. I told you this at podcast that I've dated shorter guys,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like 5'5" and 5'6", and it never bothered me because it's always about the person. And I had a choice between literally two guys wanted to date me at the same time. One was 6'6", one was 5'6", and I just preferred the personality of the shorter guy. And that's how ideally most people look at it. And you just hang out with, you know, the people that you get along with. But
yeah, ideally you'd hope for that, you know, that the personality would win. But I think you're a rare case in that regard, because a lot of times I think it's like, well, he's he's got a he's got a personality, but you know, he's got another foot over the other guy, so let's go with the taller guy.
yeah, and I think, you know, maturity helps. And I don't know why, but yeah, I've always not cared about that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And,
I think that's
and,
amazing.
and when you're sitting down, like I'm all legs, so when I sit, I'm super short. You would never guess I'm tall until I stand up. And I've had guys that ask me out when we're sitting, and then they realize like I'm so much taller. And I've had that.
If I can pay you a compliment, you wear tall very well.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, I mean, thank you. That's all I'll say. You sound like, yeah, of course. But but yeah. So, what other challenges have you had? I mean, they sound pretty similar, and like you said, it's just that you happen to be shorter than the average. Have you had a successful relationship with an average sized person, or at least dated and stuff?
Yeah, I've had I haven't had a lot of I guess successful might be like longer term. There haven't been too many in my life. I've had some really great relationships with people, with great people. I Afterward I find out that I was not ready. I was not in the right mindset to approach the relationship. But I think that really excuse me, that really comes with trial and error, and you know, trying to work out the situation so that you can be better in relationships, because I've learned through all of the mistakes that I've made and all of the, you know, dumb things that I've said, that I need some practice. I can't just pop in and be there are too many other things that are um, coming into my life and influencing me in a relationship. So if I were to just kind of, I don't know, come into a relationship, I don't think I have enough experience in I felt like I hadn't had enough experience in order
Yeah.
to be with somebody. And that also goes back to, something that I haven't talked about yet, but just being a friend. I kind of have to be guarded when I meet people and when I see people. And that started in junior high, because people will be really, really fake to me, and they'll come off like it's really cool to meet me and that it's really exciting to be around me. But really it's again, from that bucket list experience, like, there's a little guy, like, it would be so cool to talk to him and hang out with him, but it's not a real friendship. The real friendships are tough to come by, and really, in a relationship, that's what I want. I want good communication. I want somebody that's going to um, want to talk to me, want to hear about all of the crazy stuff that medically I've been through, and also just socially the crazy things that I've gotten myself into, which, I don't know, I think they're all really amazing stories. And then also professionally, I mean, I have not had a conventional professional life either. So it all affects, it all comes into play. Um and I'm still learning to get better at that, and learning how to be me, especially in a relationship, because the relationships that I have had have been with really good people, but I they haven't been at the right time. I in the good ones, I didn't feel like I was uh, a token. I wasn't there because somebody thought I was just magical or special or something like that. Like, it was somebody that thought that I was worthy of a relationship, and we were trying, and it ended up not working out.
Yeah. Well, earlier you talked about practice, and I think everyone takes dating like, or not everyone. A lot of people don't see it as practice and fun and trying new things out and just and getting better at dating itself by practicing with people. Like excuse me, we both got COVID, by the way. So
Cat's
our
out of the
voices are
bag.
I know. Luckily, we both just have a little cough. But as I've like I'm on Bumble. That's the only one I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
And I swipe right more than I would sometimes, just because I'm like, if they're relatively attractive, I'll at least give it a try. And I think more people should do that. And it's just practicing being friends. And like you said, I've never had a bad time. I've always enjoyed it, even if it's dinner. And people will be like, "Oh, usually women just give me one word answers and try to get out of there as fast as possible."
Yeah.
And I might not be as attracted, but I'm not going to sit there and be rude. And I have a good dinner and talk and drink, and you get to learn stuff about everyone. And I think if more people approach it that way, they would be really good at it when they meet the person that is right for them. And the timing is right. That's the other thing you mentioned. When the timing is right and the right person, that's when it all works out.
Yeah. And I think I know for sure, if I were to just keep doing the same things that I was doing 8 years ago when I was in a really bad relationship, or 4 years ago when I was trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, I would just be going nowhere. I'd be screwing up the relationships over and over again. And there was a relationship not too long ago in my life where the connection was incredible. The connection was unlike anything I've ever had before, and I felt more respected and more seen. At least that's what I felt anyway. In my life, and I had to end it because it was more mutual that we ended it, but there was zero codependency afterward, which was incredible, and I didn't have to check in and say, do you want to rethink this? Do you want to, because as soon as my boundaries were crossed, and as soon as I realized that, oh, this is too much, and this isn't okay, and this is not where I want to spend my time, and if this is how I'm being treated and they're treating themselves, then I can't do it. And Yeah, it sucks because I lost somebody that I thought would have really worked out, but I also didn't lose the time, that I didn't spend 6 months or 12 months with this person trying to fit that square peg into that round hole. I realized that this is a this is a non-negotiable. This is a boundary that I'm not going to to falter on, and holding it has been tough. I've been really lonely, after that. Um, but I've also felt really good about myself. I've felt like this was the right decision, and it makes me open my eyes into how else I can be good to myself and for myself for the next partner.
Yeah, definitely. I learned that recently too about, I mean, ideally we all know about boundaries, but not all of us implement them or um, follow them. But yes, and it's supposed to make you, like you just said, make you feel stronger about who you are. You know yourself better. You get the confidence, and then the more you do that, the more you can choose what you do and don't want. Do you
Yep.
mind saying what the deal breaker was, and if it's fine, if it's just a mutual thing in private?
No, I don't mind talking about it. So, I have a lot of female friends, um, and that I would say mostly that stems from me not having many relationships with, intimate relationships with females. Like I've ended up with a ton of friends, and I've even thought to myself recently that I don't want any more female friends. Like if I meet somebody and they just want to be friends, I kind of I actually it's not a knee jerk reaction for me to be like, yes, absolutely, let's be friends, because I know that I want to have an involved friendship. And I don't know that I can handle more applications in that situation. But um, so I have these friends, and they're not people that I speak to on a daily basis or even a weekly basis, but they're in my life, and they're people that I love. I care about them. And it came up in multiple discussions, actually, where I would just bring up an experience with a female friend in the past, and that was a red flag for this individual. And so a red flag to the extent where they would shut down, and would essentially stop communicating. And when we talked about it, it was brought up that my relationships with platonic female friends was inappropriate. And these people have been in my life for 20 years. They're married, they live in other states. I don't have attraction to them. They don't have attraction to me outside of just being a friend. And it's not like there's 50 of them. There's a small handful of them, like people that you keep close to your heart.
Yeah,
And that was threatening. And the more that I thought about it and delved in, it became apparent that this was probably a person who had been significantly marred or hurt in the past, and that issue hadn't necessarily been dealt with. And so you know I I was willing to go along and say, hey, like, if this is a conversation that we need to continue to have, then I'm interested in continuing to have this conversation because I care enough about you. But the answer isn't for me to just dissolve my friendships of 20 years. So
yeah. And she wasn't willing to work on it as far as get less jealousy or work on herself first, or it was more of a she seemed to be unwilling. It was more of a killing off the friends or not.
yeah, it was a really it was a set um, boundary, I guess, for her, and that was it. But I really saw it as unreasonable, and so that was the end. I mean,
Okay.
to
Yeah.
me,
So
that's a silly way to end things. But if you're going to end things on a silly way, there probably is a reason to end it. I think if that's the reason, that it makes sense to call it quits with somebody that you have some of the best connection with, then maybe it's best to just call it quits.
Yeah. I mean, to me, connection is everything too. And you just know it when you have it. And if it's a hard stop for her or she's not willing to, for whatever reason, but I get it. And it's hard.
And also, in the conversation, I guess I'd like to say that, I'm more than willing to move away from, having these friendships be a part of my life, but also I'm not willing to just like cut off these friendships when I don't even have dates or many dates. You know what I mean? Or I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we're making a decision to move together to go and make our relationship stronger, that doesn't mean that I'm also going to be bringing along my 2 or 3 friends from 20 years ago. They need to be a part of our close-knit group as well. It's like, no, the relationship between me and my significant other is going to strengthen, and more time is going to be spent in that, not including, these friendships that I've had that are strictly platonic, it's, so it's, there's something else there that I, given what it was, it needed to end.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And like you said, connections, it sucks when you have a great connection and it doesn't work out. But, right. So do you want to talk more about dating stuff or get into the sex stuff? I'm sure there's, some people have perceptions of what, all the stuff about little people. So you want to just start with what you've heard or dealt with or had people ask or whatever you want to.
I say, let's go wherever you want to go. If you want to go dating stuff, if you want to go sex stuff, I mean, I'm sure people are on the other end saying sex stuff, ask about the sex stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious about, I think it's common things that people will wonder about size and all that stuff. So
if I stand next to you, are your breasts in my face? Yes. The answer is yes. Yeah. What would you like to know? Do you have a question?
I mean, I guess, is it proportional? Like, is that standard? Like, is it like normal size guys? There's a range of everything. So I'm sure there's a range, not that you've compared yourself potentially to all the other little people, but if there's a common thing about that or
penis size. Are you talking?
Yes. Thank you. I'm not just saying it. I think good idea. Just say it.
Yeah, just say it. Tamara, that's a very personal question.
I know. And you don't have to say for yourself. I'm just curious. Like, I've got to imagine there's a range, just like there's a huge range for.
Yeah, I've talked about that with friends of mine, and I think we fall into the range as well. I think, our intimate partners will say, it kind of, maybe they're surprised, in a delightful way. But I've also heard other guys say to me, like, yeah, it's super small. Like, that's just what it, that's how it is. So
as women, we know that there's more of a range than guys might know. I mean, obviously there's porn and all the stuff out there.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
Definitely seen to share different. Sizes.
Yeah. My inseam is my inseam is 18 inches, and I'm I'll just say I'm comfortably walking around. If that makes sense.
In that range. Yes.
If that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, I think, I'm sure that's one of the first things, if not the first thing that pops into a woman's mind. And there's a range. The majority of folks that I've spoken with have said that they're within the satisfactory, or like the average range for penis size. However, I think that there's, that also gets built into the self-confidence struggle. Holy cow, thinking about, are you adequate? Are you, your body certainly is not adequate from the get-go. Is your penis going to be adequate as well? Well, I don't might not even want to ever find out, and I think that's a real travesty. That's such a huge hurdle for us, because every single person I know who is little has such an incredible personality, and they're witty, and they're funny, and they're real, and they have incredible emotions. And I think for me, that's where I find my attraction comes from now. It's not, is your physicality just magazine worthy or not? Like, I think that's what I used to care about. Now it's like, do you see the smirk on my face that was there for a millisecond, and that finds, you attracted to me, or something that I'm into finds you attracted to me, and you reciprocate that, and that, like, that stuff is where I'm finding is like this long-term attraction, and this long-term, like, thing that I want to pull from in order to be with somebody, or
I mean,
have a relationship.
Sorry, I was just saying that's where the potential comes from, I think, too. Similar interests and or just the connection, and you just get each other. When you talk, you don't have to like say, what do you mean by that? The whole time, or you're texting and you're like, huh? And you just get where the other person's coming from. And that's not common. And when it happens, you want to grab onto it.
Yeah.
And like you said, the personalities, I'm sure it's stereotypical, but the super attractive people that don't have to develop a personality, and people will still want to be around them. Some do develop personalities and some don't. And I think being a late bloomer, or being like slow developer, whatever, just having some kind of circumstance when you're younger, you develop a better personality because you've had to. And like you said, that just makes it much more interesting and fun to be around. And eventually people will enjoy that about other people, and that's what they will pick and choose, and out of potential mates, versus all the looks and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I think it's really important to. I mean, again, it's just like anybody else. I think that's really important stuff to focus on. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I try to keep it to 30 minutes, and it's around that time. So are there any, or actually we haven't talked about your show yet. Talk about your show. Talk about any closing comments about what we talked about here, or all the things. I'll let you pick the order.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. My show is called I'm Kind of a Big Deal, Little People, Huge Stories. And I really have a great time interviewing little people and sharing our experience, because I just feel like media has done a really lackluster job of showcasing little people in a real light. I've worked in the entertainment industry for a number of years, and I've just been covered up in tons of foam and makeup and troll costumes and leprechaun costumes and all these silly things that don't portray me as a human being. So that's what I'm trying to rail against in Hollywood with my show. And, I guess one thing that I will leave with is, or leave you with, is that it's a call to action, actually. So if you do end up seeing a little person out in the wild, in the grocery store or the supermarket, or that's the same thing, I was going to say the bank, whatever, walking down the street, and your initial compulsion is to avoid, take a photo, point and laugh, stare, whisper quietly, under your breath about them. Try and reframe it. See if you could imagine yourself introducing yourself to them and just saying hello to that person, because really that's where the quote unquote normalization comes in. That's where we find our acceptance and our ability to say, hey, that's just a person, and it's okay to talk to them. And who knows, it might be a super awkward introduction, but that'll give you something to laugh about, because I guarantee you that person has not had many people come up to them and just say hello, and want to know their name, at least in a sincere way. And the exposure, in my opinion, is what's going to get us to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, that's my podcast is about normalizing sex, hear about normalizing humans. And there's, this conversation, you would never guess from our voices that there's anything different about you, that you happen to be a little bit shorter. So
exactly.
If more people would see people that way too, and so, you can listen the same way, that you're just humans. So seeing people with you.
And through sex is a great way to normalize each other. So.
Yes. So go out and bed or say hi to
Exactly. I support.
If you genuinely want to.
Yeah. See if you can prove me wrong for my answer to the penis question.
All right. Well, on that note, I will say thank you very much for being on the show. It was awesome to have you. It was great meeting you at PodFest.
It was great meeting you as well.
All right. Thank you very much again, and hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, tell your friends about it.
Frank Talk, Sex and Dating Education.